Hello everybody, this is Jasmina, and in this video I'm going to talk about this is the first one in the BaZi series. I'm going to talk about your elements that are in your chart and how they relate to your day master and what it means to you. Now, do not put your birth date and time in the comments. It's very, very risky. I do not do BaZi, so it won't do you any good to do that. And you don't, if you email me, I would just say, sorry, I don't do BaZi. So it won't help you there. You will have to find another practitioner if you want a full analysis done. I'm going to probably have about 10 to 12 videos total, but I'll have to see how far I get. I'm taking a class right now, uh, not terribly expensive, to learn BaZi. I'll see what I can learn. It's just started, so it will come in time. But this is stuff I already know just from my reading. Now, I do consider, of course, aspects of your BaZi when I do feng shui analysis because they're important. But before you continue, it would be a really good idea if you get your BaZi chart so that you can follow along and understand what I'm talking about. So there are many BaZi calculators out there. Some just give you a BaZi and don't tell you anything. Others give you some very useful information. One of the most useful and easily to use software is Joey App's free BaZi software. The best thing to do is just Google Joey App free BaZi calculator because he keeps changing the URL for it. So that's the best way to find it. Anyway, he uses a different method that's not really stated exactly how he does it. He doesn't go into any detail, at least in the public, of how he actually does the calculations. I cannot find anything where he is actually telling us how he does it. There are a couple different methods out there. There's at least 5 different methods of calculating your elemental balance. But Joey App has one advantage. He presents it in a way that makes it easy to use. And it's unique. So in general, yes, I do recommend you try to use his software, at least for one of your sources. Now the BaZi calculator, and that's just what a BaZi dash, I think it has a dash, calculator.com website. Just Google BaZi calculator. That should be the first thing that comes up. It also does a good job. It represents the data in a more standard way, which isn't so easy to use, but it also has data that Joey App does not. And this will be important later. But right now, all you really need is the Joey App software for this first piece of information. Now, together, the two do better than they do separately. Now, I am a proponent, and many masters are also proponents. I think Douglas Chan is one of them, of using your solar time of birth. Joey App doesn't do that, but I think this is important. It can make a significant difference, especially in your reading of your Chi-Min chart. And in BaZi, it can make a difference in the symbolic stars. So it is important in both cases. Now, one time I learned how to do a full Chi-Min analysis. It's been years since I've done that, and it's very time consuming, so I don't really have interest in doing that anymore. But when I did this with the time of date on my birth certificate, it indicated I should hate change. I should really dislike change. Now, when I said that to my husband as I was going through the analysis, he actually scoffed. He snorted in laughter because he knows that's not true. And it made me really seriously question whether Chi-Min analysis knows anything, because this was very clearly wrong. So, But then I discovered, well, what about solar time of birth? Let me check that. That made a difference in the hour, that is that 2 hour window in BaZi and Shimen and all that. It changed my hour of birth. And when I put in the solar time of birth, it actually indicates I seek change. Not that I like change, I actually seek change. And that makes sense. Now, this is the difference, just in my case, this is the difference between a Fanyin and a Fuyin chart. I can never keep the two straight, but one, it says everything stays like a person likes to keep things the way they were, they don't like change. And the other one, they actually seek change. And that's just chance that this was the difference between 2 hours. Most of the time between 2 hours, it doesn't make a huge difference, but it can. And this is why I am a proponent of solar time, because it makes a lot more sense with who I am. Now, the best way to determine your solar time of birth, and this is so you know exactly what's going on and you don't have to trust some other website, because some of them allow you to adjust for this, for solar time. But this, you absolutely certain you're going to get it right. There is a time and date website, and they have many different tabs, and sun is one of them. That's where you want to go. This is very, very useful when I'm trying to figure out time differences for things being done, or presentations or something, on the web at a certain time. Well, this is the site I use. I don't use the sun, but I use the time and date. Now you enter the city of your birth or the nearest city in your time zone. Now, preferably it is as close as possible to your longitude. And that's because solar noon depends on longitude. So, for example, both New York City and Detroit are both in the Eastern time zone. One is on the east side, one is on the west side. And they both happen to use daylight savings. But here's an example. On the first Chinese solar, Chinese solar New Year, February 4th of this year, New York solar noon is at 12:09, whereas Detroit's is at 12:46. So when it's noon in Detroit, when it's noon in New York, it's not even 11:30 in Detroit by the solar, by where the sun is positioned. Now, solar noon is where the sun is at its highest point in its path in the sky. So then, once you've done that, you find your year, day, and month, and that's the easiest way to do it because it keeps wanting to reset things when you change the year. So find your year first, and then it's not too hard to find the rest. Now, the solar noon will be the column that's second from the right-hand side in the table. You have to scroll down a little to find the table, but it's there. And if you look at any place, anything, you actually see that the solar noon changes a little bit every day with respect to the clock, the the clock time. So this means you really have to find your correct date of birth. So the trick here is that on the top of the table, there is a place that shows the year, and it has like a little arrow so you can open it up. You can only go back 20 years. But you'll click on that. If you're over 20 years old, you're going to have to do this. If you click on the earliest date and then hit go, then it refreshes, and then you can go back another 20 years. So you can go back as far as you need to go. And but that's the one trick that took me a while to figure out. So this will make it easier for you. And then once you get to the right year, then on the left-hand side, on the top of the table, you have a little arrow button that you can change the month. And then you scroll down until you find the day. And you can actually click on your day, and it'll actually show you the pattern of light and dark. And so it's just interesting looking. Now, Note that solar time of birth and use that when you enter the time of birth into the calculator. Now, here's how you deal with it. If the solar noon is after 12, then you find the difference and you subtract those minutes from your time of birth on your birth certificate. Here's an example. Seattle, Washington, random date. I don't know anybody born on this day, but solar noon is actually after 1 p.m. And that's because of daylight savings. Otherwise, it would be just a little after 12 when it's not daylight savings. But there you have to subtract 69 minutes from your time of birth. And you can see this can easily change your time of birth. This is over an hour. So it can be very, very big depending on when you were born and where you were born. If the solar noon is before 12, and this is of course 12 noon, then you find the difference and you add those minutes to your time of birth. So here's another example. Green Bay, Wisconsin, again a random date. It is at 11:55 a.m., so it's 5 minutes before noon. So you add 5 minutes to your time of birth. And that will give you your solar time of birth. Now, some calculators will allow you to choose solar time. Don't do that. You've already done the calculation. And this one is based, the one at the time and date is based on a lot of real astronomical data. And I don't know where the BaZi calculator, for example, it has one where you can do that. I don't know exactly how it does it. This you're certain of. So now let's get to the heart of it. BaZi elements have meaning beyond what your daymaster is. But what the elements mean to you will depend on your daymaster. But we're right here just looking at the general elements. So wood is the only one that's alive of the 5 elements. So it represents growth and expansion. The yang version of wood is usually represented by a large tree. And the yin version is represented usually by grass or flowers, something much more flexible than a tree. And so those are some of the properties it has. Now, fire is, of course, passion and energy. Yang fire is usually represented by the sun, and yin fire by a candle or perhaps a campfire. The yin earth, it is either stability or nurturing, depending whether it's yang or yin. Yang earth is represented by a mountain, so it is stable. And yin earth is represented by soil to grow crops in, so it's the nurturing version. Metal is represented by focus and strength. Now, the yang version is usually represented by an axe, which of course has to do with strength. And the yin version is usually represented by a piece of jewelry. So like the metal part of a ring. And so that is more focus because it takes a lot of focus to create pieces of jewelry in general. So this is why it represents focus. Now, water represents adaptability and change. And of course, yang water is something like the ocean, big, powerful, basically unstoppable, but still yet it adapts to whatever the coastline is. Whereas yin water is more like rain, and it represents maybe a little bit more change and um, but like water, like a glass of water, depends on the shape of the glass, what the shape of the water will be. So that's basically what that represents. So people that have higher levels of wood, fire, or water are likely to fare better in periods 9 and 1 because these two periods have a lot of change involved. Period 9 will have a lot more rather abrupt and rather more significant changes, whereas period 1 will still have a lot of change, but it will kind of like settle things down and be a more, let's say, get more back to normal. Um, so, but it will still be a lot of change. So we, so the people that do have higher levels in general can deal better because they'll have the strengths they need to deal with period 9 and 1. And if you don't have high levels, then you simply have to work harder. That's just the way life is. Now, what any element means to you with respect to your natural talents is completely based on what your day master is. So even though these elements have these things, if you have, let's take water, where you have the adaptability and change. Well, does this have to do with your resources so that you have the ability to change, or does it have to do with your output or your wealth or your influence? I mean, it depends on what water means to you, and what it means to you is based on your day master, how this element affects you personally. So let's just look at a very simple diagram of what a BaZi looks like. The top row is almost always the heaven stem, and it'll be an element. The center row will be an animal sign, and hopefully you'll find one that has both Chinese and English. And then the hidden stems will have between 1 and 3 elements. So these are the top and the bottom rows are both elements. And the order is normally this way: year, month, day, hour, because the Chinese is written backwards to English. So it looks a little backwards. Some people may flip this. You have to be cognizant of which way they do it. So now what your resources are will be the element that produces your day master. What your output is, it's the element your day master produces. The element that your day master controls is your wealth, and the element that controls your day master is your influence. So this is how all of this is done. So I'm going to go through one by one so that you can see this. Now, this is for a wood day master. Water is its resource. Fire is its output. Wealth is the earth, and metal is the influence. So if you have a high level of fire, there's a lot of output that comes from passion. You have a passion and you're very creative with it. If you have a high level of water, you have a high ability to adapt to change, and you tend to learn quite quickly because water adapts very quickly. So that's what that means. If you have a high level of earth, you have a high level of leadership ability through stability. Now, you Daymaster is growth and expansion, but when you're dealing with a leadership, the way to do it well is to do it with stability. That is, you don't change a lot. Even though you may grow and expand and have new ideas, you do it when you make the change as a leader, you do it more slowly so that it's creates a more stable environment for your employees. Now, for high levels of metal, basically your ability to influence comes from a focus and determination, and you basically really need to work at it to be able to influence people. Now, for fire, a fire day master, wood is its resource, earth is its output, metal is its wealth, and water is its influence. So if you have a high level of earth, that means your creativity actually comes slowly because earth is more stable, a bit slower. Things don't happen fast. But this usually means you're better as a leader of a creative business because you have the passion, but you may not have the ability to create quickly, which, if you're in business, is an important thing. But you can be a leader and you may be able to recognize good ideas very quickly, but you don't come up with them yourself very quickly. So that's That's what that means. If you have a high level of wood, um, improvements in your life come from learning, because wood is growth and expansion. It also has to do with learning new things. So this is where the improvement in your life comes from. You need to learn a lot of stuff. If you have high levels of metal, your leadership ability comes through basically being very focused whenever you are talking to your your employees. You have to be very focused, and also you have to not necessarily be super strict, but you have to say this has to be done and emphasize the importance of what you want done. If you have a high level of water, you're going to influence others by adapting to the situation. Um, and and this is actually a very good thing to have if you have fire as your daymaster, because this, and you do have a lot of movement and change involved with being a fire daymaster. I mean, you're not. It's not like you're an earth. An earth would have a lot of trouble with this. So for an Earth Day Master, fire is its resource, metal is its output, water is its wealth, and wood is its influence. So if you have a high metal uh, in your chart and you have an Earth Day Master, your creativity is going to require a lot of work. It's not going to come to you easily, but what you do create with this focus and determination will be good, something you can actually develop and use and actually have it worthwhile creating. That is, it's worth spending the time doing it. So if you have a high level of fire, what feeds you, what will make your life better is passion, and 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 making sure you have enough energy to act on that passion. So if it's high levels of water, your leadership comes through adaptability. Now, this can be quite hard for a Earth Day Master, because they tend, especially if they're a Yang Earth, they tend not to like change and they don't adapt very well. If you are a Yin Earth, it may not be so hard, but leadership may be a little bit hard for you because you have to change your general nature. So maybe being the leader isn't so vital. You might do better not being the leader. If you have a high level of wood, again, your influence comes through adapting and growing with change. So if you are an Earth Day Master, I'm hoping you have more high levels of metal and fire, because then you'll have a passion, and that passion will let you have enough focus and determination so you can actually create some really good things, because you're not quite suited for period 9 uh, to to being a leader, and because things are going to change so fast, and you're just, even soil doesn't like change very much. That is yin earth. It's better with it than yang earth, but it still is not, it's not happy. It really likes things to be a bit more stable. For Metal Day Master, earth is your resource, water is your output, wood is your wealth, and fire is your influence. So high levels of water, basically you can be a trailblazer. So this is pretty good. You can see things ahead of other people. So you're ahead of the society. You can, so you can, really make a big difference in the world. If you have a high level of earth, you it's the stability you have in your life that actually allows you to function at your best. So you need a stable home life to do very well. If your home life is unstable, like you're going through a divorce, you're probably going to see a lowering of your ability to create things, because this will disturb your day master. That's the best way I can put it. If you have high levels of wood, the way you're going to lead is by expanding the views of everybody that your employees, and this is very in line with the high levels of water. I mean that you're ahead of everybody else, so that works pretty well. And if you're going to be influencing people, it will be through your passion. You have to express yourself very passionately if you want to influence others. And the last day master would be a water day master. Metal is your resources, wood is your output, fire is your wealth, and earth is your influence. So if you have a high level of wood, creativity comes through learning and expanding your views. So, for example, traveling to exotic locations. That would be a way to expand your wood, to have your wood be activated. So this makes you see things differently, and this is a way of growth and expansion. If you have high levels of metal, the focus and determination is what will allow you to improve your life circumstances. That is, it will allow you to create more in your life. So that is pretty important. Now, high fire, that means leadership has to come through passion. You have to instill your passion in your employees, if you're of course if you're a business owner, but that's how you influence your kids, your husband, everybody. For earth, you influence others through stability. That is, even though period 9 is going to have a lot of changes, when you're influencing others, you talk about things that remain the same rather than worrying about how these changes are going to affect you. So there's a really big disconnect between influencing others and how you're living your life. So this may be one of the harder things to do because it's not in your nature so much. Now, I hope after you look at this, you can see that if two people have the exact same distribution of elements, they can have very different talents and very different skills if their day masters are different. So you can't just look at your elements and say something. You really have to look at your elements with respect to your day master. Now, the 10 elements, of course, also have some meaning independent of the 10 gods. These elements, there are 10 elements, the yin yang version of the 5 elements. But again, what they represent to you depends on your day master. So, and I would say that it does refine exactly what an element means to you with whatever level you have in your chart by looking at the 10 gods, because you are splitting between the yin and yang version, and that does have an effect. And it may be possible that you have a yang version of a certain element, but you're missing the yin, or vice versa. And that has an effect on how that general characteristic interacts with your BaZi and exactly what it means. So I'm also going to cover the 10 gods. Now, if you're choosing to use the Joey free BaZi calculator, you're going to be focusing on 2 diagrams on the bottom of the second page. That's where all the juicy stuff is. There's a lot of information and it can be quite overwhelming. But if you just focus here, you can actually understand a lot about yourself. The bottom left diagram looks a little bit like a spider web to me. He calls it structures. And this is what I just talked about. What does the element mean to you? And you will have levels on this diagram. And one will be annual, one will be natal. Look at the natal one. The companion, you will see something listed there. The companion will always be whatever your element, your day master is in that category. So whether you're yang fire or yin fire, your companion will be fire. There will be 5 dots shown on your chart, and you again looking at the natal one. It's usually the one in purple, but he could change that. You want to focus on the natal one for now. If by some chance you have 2 elements that are 0%, you're just going to see a dot in the center for both because there's no distinction the um, between them if they're at zero. So uh, the this is a pentagram because there's 5 elements, and uh, you have the outer ring is 100%, the inner ring is zero. And so you could have 2 0 at the center, and you're not going to know. It may be a little confusing, but that just means zero. And you can have anything between 0 and 100%. Now, it appears, and I can't be 100% sure about this, but it appears what is being measured here is your level of your element with respect to the maximum possible for any chart. But it might not be possible for any chart. It might be possible for anyone born in your year. I have really no idea, and Joey App does not state this clearly, but it seems to be useful. So just deal with it and uh, don't get too bogged down with these details. Now, anything between 40 and 60% is considered average. Anything above 60 is high. Above 85%, that's considered very high. Below 40 is low, and below 15 is very low. And it could be as low as 0. Now, the low level does not mean you can't do something. It just means that it's going to take more effort to gain that skill because it doesn't come naturally to you. What this tells you by the elemental level is what is easy for you to do. Now, on the bottom right-hand side, there's a thing called that Joey App calls profiles. These are the 10 gods. And this is the more standard name. This is what you'll see most other places. They'll call them 10 gods. And this, it refines exactly what the element means to you. The elements tell you about your natural skills. And the 10 gods tell you more about how you naturally interact with the rest of the world and with other people. So it's a refinement of your natural skills. Together, the elements and the 10 gods can give you a pretty good idea of your strengths and your weaknesses in dealing with life and all of its challenges. So this is what the 10 gods are. The normal way to identify them is through these abbreviations. Now, Joey App gives them different names, and they're actually pretty good names because they really tell you a bit more what it means. Because, what does direct officer mean? That's kind of on the confusing side. And what is Rob Wealth? It doesn't make so much sense when you just say those names. So he gives them names that help you understand them. So it's good. But other places will only give it to you in terms of these abbreviations. So you need to know them. So the friend is the same element. And when we say polarity, we're talking about yin or yang. So if you have a yang day master, this will be the yang version. It'll be identical to your day master. The opposite polarity would be the opposite. So if you have a yang day master, this would be the yin version of your element. So if you had yang fire, this would be yang fire. If your day master is yang fire, this would be yin fire. That way. So this is what that polarity means. The eating god is the element your day master produces. So that's the output. And the same polarity, opposite polarity. Your element that produces the day master is your resources. And so you have the indirect and direct resources. The element your day master controls is your wealth. So you have the indirect wealth and the direct wealth. And then the element controlling the day master will be the 7 killings and the direct officer. So this is the element that controls your day master, not your direct officer. Sorry. So anyway, you've already actually seen some of this. So now for a day, A fire day master, of course, fire is its companion. So these things stay the same. And it just is a different element that represents these things. I just want to make this super, super clear. And also, which of the 10 day masters is associated with that? So, fire is again companion, networking, partnership. Earth is what you produce. So, these are your outputs. Wood is the is what is your skill, where your skill comes from. And metal is what you are controlling. So this is your wealth. And the water is the thing that controls you. It's your ability to influence. So the earth, very similarly, earth is your friend. Metal is what you produce. Fire is what produces you. Water is what you control. And wood is what controls you. So that tells you how this works. For the metal day master, again, metal is your friend, water is your output, earth is your resources, wood is your wealth, and fire is your influence. And finally, water is your friend, wood is is what you produce, metal is what produces you, so that is your resources. Fire is what you control, so it's your wealth, and earth is what controls you, so it's your ability to influence others. So this is maybe a clearer, just a simple table. It might be easier than the diagrams. I'm hoping this really sinks in. Now, regardless of what you have, your attitude makes all the difference. Whether you have a positive or negative outlook on life will determine how these elements are expressed in your life. So if you have a negative outlook, the negative properties come out. If you have a positive outlook, the positive ones do. Now, you can control your emotions as a whole. A lot of people don't believe that, but you do. A negative outlook can make a problem look like something that can make you feel helpless, perhaps hopeless, and all you do is worry. So it just like hovers like a dark cloud over your head. A positive outlook will make it look like a problem is something that you need to tackle. You just tackle. You say, okay, this doesn't work, so let's do this. I mean, you don't even look at it as a real problem. You just look at it as something you have to learn how to deal with. And it makes all the difference. Now, you can't control external realities, but you can control your response to them. And that's what happens here, whether you had the positive response or the negative response. So here are the 10 gods, and they are listed in basically what I've been trying to stick to. Your friend, which is your companion, the output, which is the element your daymaster produces, your resources, which is the element that produces your daymaster, and the element that your daymaster controls is your wealth, and the element that controls your daymaster is your influence. And it's always the same polarity, opposite, same polarity, opposite. So that's how these 10 gods are defined with respect to your daymaster. And this will be listed, already done for you in Joey App's chart. So you don't have to really worry about this. But if you wanted to understand this a bit better, this is the chart that you need. Here are the positive attributes. So if you have, if it's the friend, you have a lot of friends that are mutually support one another. They support you, you support them. When you need help, you get help from them. When they need help, you help them. So this is the normal type of good friendship. Rob wealth is more like you have a bigger desire to motivate others, to help others become better. They can do the same for you, but you feel much more fulfilled when you're helping others. And you might have, let's say, trouble or issues getting help yourself, but uh, that is receiving help. Some people don't like to be helped, uh, and that's kind of sad for them. But in this case, that doesn't have to happen, but you still feel better helping others than getting help yourself. So the eating God, this is you have a positive outlook. You're going to be more artistic. It could be in art, music, and that's creating music, not performing it per se. In writing or creating new ideas, this has a lot of possibilities. It's some sort of creative output, and this could just be a hobby. If you have the HO, it's more of a performance output. So that would be actors, stage musicians, orchestra musicians, dancers, even motivational speakers would be in this category. And so this again is your output. Now, when you have a positive attitude, whatever level of resources you have, high level, of course, is better. I mean, it makes it easier for you to do. But if it's indirect resources here, you're basically idea oriented rather than physically action oriented. You tend to be able to look at the big picture very easily and gain wisdom from the big picture. You also tend to be quite curious. Whereas if it's DR, direct resources, you're more analytical. You'd also tend to have pretty good math skills, and therefore you tend to have scientific interests. And they say a picture paints 1,000 words. There's a phrase like that, something like that in English. Well, an equation paints 1,000 words for a scientist. So there's some equivalent here in terms of being able to understand things just by imagining stuff. And that's what you do with an equation. You look at it and you can answer questions because you can do the math in your head, basically. Now, for wealth, indirect wealth is more associated with being an entrepreneur. You tend to have more revolutionary ideas. You're daring. You have the guts to take the risk to start your own business, because starting your own business is quite risky. They say over half businesses fail in the first 5 years. So, that is not, so this makes people very wary of doing this. And I can understand why. Now, if you have more DW, you tend to be more detail oriented. That is, you can really deal with details. You tend to be more organized, and because you're organized, you actually have ability to lead also, because you're not scattered. And so you can be a coherent leader. And again, these are your wealth. And if you, again, express or live your life in a positive manner, then the 7K is high levels of resilience. You're courageous. You're physically robust most of the time. You tend to be healthier. Whereas if it's the diplomatic officer, the direct officer, you tend to be more diplomatic. You can resolve difficult situations, so you make pretty good leaders. So it depends on, of course, which one is high for you and whether or not you have a positive attitude. Now, negative, if you have high levels of friend and you have, in fact, if you also have low levels of friend, it can be a problem. And if you have high levels, you tend to get clingy and needy in a relationship and people get overwhelmed. But if you have very low levels, you can be very aloof and cold and uncaring. At least that's how people view you. You might not feel that inside, but that's how people will view you. If you have low levels of or high levels of raw wealth and you have negative attitudes, you tend to spend more money than you earn. It doesn't matter which way, high or low, that can be it. Or you can be very, very stingy if it's low, to the point where maybe you risk your own health. It's because you're not eating the right foods or good food. because you're really unwilling to spend the money on it. Yeah, there could be something like that. Now, if you have a negative general outlook and you have a lot of eating God, that's EG, you tend to have very unrealistic expectations. And if it's very low, you tend to have no new ideas. Uh, Now, that's not necessarily a disaster, not having new ideas, because most jobs don't require new ideas. So that's not so bad. But the unrealistic expectations are. That's a problem. Now, for high levels of HO, when you have a negative viewpoint, you tend to have ego problems. You have a big head, as they say. It can lead to the level of narcissism where you only care about how the world gives to you and you never give back. But if it's very low, you can downplay your abilities, and this can harm you in your ability to move up in a career because you simply don't even acknowledge what you do. You just say, you just don't want to talk about it, that kind of thing. So now if you have either high or low levels of the indirect resources and you're in a negative mindset, you tend to be a lot like the EG. Your head is in the clouds, your unrealistic expectations. If it's low level, you tend to really lack focus. You can't look at the big picture. I mean, life is just bewildering for you. You just don't understand how to deal with it. If you have either too high or too low levels of the direct resources and you're in a negative state of mind, you become too analytical. That's if it's too high. Or actually too low, you actually have a low ability to interact with others in a reasonable fashion. People just won't understand you. You're abrupt, or you're cold, and you treat a person like a number. I mean, that is the kind of thing that when you're in a negative mindset, that a high level or low level direct resources can give you. Now, for wealth, if you're in a negative mindset, whether it's high or low, uh, you you can be too headstrong, especially if it's high, and so you don't listen to good advice, and you may lose your business. I mean, because this is IW have to do a lot with entrepreneurship. But if it's very low, you basically lack initiative anywhere in your life, and it's very hard to get out of that. So this one is one of the more difficult ones to deal with if you have a negative mindset. Now, if you have a high level of even low level of direct wealth and you're in a negative mindset, then you tend to become money obsessed. And you can also have the inability to follow the rules. So this might lead you to doing something silly like robbing a bank, because 90 some percent of bank robbers get caught. Really robbing a bank is a very dumb thing to do. Uh, but people can get desperate, and this is what they might do because they're so money obsessed. Now, this is one of the more dangerous ones. If you're in a negative state of mind and you have high levels of 7K, you can become aggressive, even abusive. I mean, this is really, really bad for the other person. And it's usually bad for you because, you will have to pay for that. But it is, if you have low levels, you actually probably don't have to worry about this part so much, but it can lead to a lot of frustration. Rather than becoming actually aggressive, it's just a lot of frustration. And that's again if you're low and have a negative attitude. And for the direct officer, if you're very high and your mindset is negative, you become a control freak. and overbearing, and nobody wants to work with you. And that's not very good. If you have low levels and a negative mindset, you tend to be very scattered and can't organize yourself, so you can't get anything done. So these are all things that have to do with this. Now, which property you exhibit depends on your emotional state, which can vary from moment to moment, and basically how well your life is going, because that usually tells you whether or not you have a positive or negative outlook. Now, again, you are in control of your general emotional state of mind. Of course, you when you're in a stressful situation, this is when you actually become aware of your state of mind. So if you're in a stressful situation, there's two things you can do. You can take action or you can worry about it. Action is when you're in a positive state of mind. Worrying about it is when you're in a negative state of mind. Again, you can decide how you want to interact, how you want to deal with a problem. This is really up to you. You may not feel that way, but it's true. You do have a choice in how you react. Now, this doesn't mean that you'll always be in a positive state of mind, because external conditions can influence you. Large happenings in your life, like for example, a death of a loved one, that can change your state of mind very quickly, in a flash of, or a snap of a finger. Now, but these things tend to be temporary. You go back to your normal state of mind relatively quickly. I mean, it depends on the person how quickly this happens. Now, gratitude for what you do have is key to having your positive attributes shine. Because I can guarantee you there are people right now who are in a much worse situation than you are. If you can listen to this video, you're healthy enough, even if you're homesick, you're still healthy enough to be able to listen to the video. You have internet access, which a lot of people don't have. So you really are in a pretty good state, even if you don't think you are. Resentment of what you do not have will easily bring out your negative attributes. So just, really, you need to be grateful for what you have. And of course, this negative resentment usually results in you not functioning as well. That makes things worse, which makes you more resentful. And so this is what Joey Yap would call a negative or a downward spiral. That's what he calls it, a downward spiral. It is pretty hard once you start to get here to go back to the upwards cycle, but gratitude is still the key. Now, you should investigate both types of charts, the elemental breakdown, that spiderweb looking thing, and the 10 gods, because this gives you a more rounded picture of yourself. Again, first look at the elemental breakdown, which Joey Yap calls structures. That's on the bottom left-hand side of the second page, and see where your elements are at. Again, 40 to 60 is average. 60 to 85 is considered a healthy high level. And if you have this, be happy. Whenever you have here is you don't have to work on this, and it tends not to get out of hand. If it's between 85 and 100%, it's at least a potentially unhealthy high level. So if negative things happen in your life and you become negative, these things can be harmful. Whereas in general, the 60 to 85% never become harmful, usually. I mean, you have to be in a really bad situation for that to become harmful. Anything between 15 and 40% is low, and a 0 to 15% is potentially unhealthy low. It's like the potentially unhealthy high. And so when you're in a negative mindset, the negative stuff can easily come out in the 15, 0 to 15% level. So if Basically, if any of your attributes are in the 40 to 60% level, this means you can compete with most people, and so that means like the average person. So these skills are perfectly good. You don't have to worry about them. Healthy high levels indicate skills you can acquire with little effort, but that don't overwhelm your life. Unhealthy high levels potentially cause issues if you solely rely on them, especially if you get into a negative mindset. And then you exhibit like the extreme negative part of these, whatever this means to you. The low levels are areas where you would take more effort to master, but you can master these things. It's just you probably don't enjoy them as much, but if you need to master them, you can. It just takes more work than the average person. Unhealthy low levels basically can make some skills too hard to do. I mean, they take so much effort, you just decide to, for example, change your job so you don't have to do this. That's what we mean by this. Now, interestingly, I think that actually 0% is less of a problem than 1%, because 0%, at least in my own personal experience, seems to this is not part of your life, and you don't care. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't mean you can't do anything. It just you you don't have any desire for that piece, so you just never consider putting it in your life. Now that is perhaps only valid at 0. If 1%, then you actually care, but then it's super hard to do. So I think there is a little difference between 0 and 1%. Now, I'm going to talk about in different videos the implications of high or low or extremely high levels, um, and that will follow. I'm not going to do it in this video because it's already long enough. What we cover here is what an element means to you within your BaZi that is based, and what it means to you is based on your Daymaster. The same element at the same level can mean a completely different thing to another person, again, depending on what their Daymaster is. So what any element means to you depends on your Daymaster, or if it's somebody else, on their Daymaster. So that's basically it. I'd like to thank you for watching. This was a long video, and I appreciate you listening the whole time. And if you have any questions or comments, you can leave a comment or email me. Thank you again for watching.